Hey guys, what's going on? It's Kozai and I welcome you to this video essay. Today we're going to be talking about, well, a little bit of everything. So, let me preface this discussion with a bit of backstory. On September 22nd, 2017, a special game hit the market. Well, market is a term used loosely here, as the game is completely free. Its name? Doki-Doki Literature Club. Now, if you have never played this game, I highly suggest you play it yourself. It is a game best experienced alone, late at night, in a dark room. Well, I only say that because I have no friends and I average 30 hours of sleep a week, but I digress. I'm gonna ramble for a few more moments to give you time to click off. If you don't make it at that point, don't dislike my video. Okay, here we go. Now this video isn't just about DDLC. It is also about Bloodborne. Oh, you know, that game that came out in 2015 and everyone loved because it was a multifaceted classic? The game that has recently seen a spontaneous resurgence for no discernible reason? Oh, you were thinking about the other one, wise ass. Well, if you're not exactly sure what I mean, then in the words of Master Willem, our eyes are yet to open. Okay, for those of you still hanging around, let's begin. To be honest, this video is like that sibling that wasn't planned. Just kinda came out of nowhere, but everyone loves them anyway. But in all seriousness, I never expected the day I would be here juxtaposing an action RPG and a visual novel. Surprisingly, they have a lot more in common than one might first expect. I've been playing both recently and I have a lot of thoughts stored up about the two. Now this video isn't necessarily going to be an attempt to prove a point or anything. The focal point is more so me attempting to put some thoughts on paper essentially. I just got inspired and wanted a reason to talk about two very good games. Is that a crime? Didn't think so. With all that out of the way, sit back, relax, and let me take your mind on a bit of a journey. Now I played Doki-Doki about 3 weeks ago at the time of this recording. Since you've played the game too, you know good and well that Doki-Doki is not a simple visual novel. This is merely a facade to veil its true, dark nature. This game is actually a psychological horror title, and it bears this label triumphantly. After the groundwork, of course. Speaking of the groundwork, let us begin there. At the beginning, as all stories do. There are many reasons why Doki-Doki is successful in what it aims to achieve. At the start, the player thinks they are in a cutesy visual novel. That might deviate from the formula a bit, but will still hold true to the moe of the genre, and will ultimately have them win the heart of the cute anime girl of their choosing. By the end, well, the player is left in a face-down fetal position in a puddle of their own tears, having the biggest existential crisis of their life. By the time the credits roll, the player realizes that Doki-Doki Literature Club is a plethora of things, but conventional is probably the last possible word on the mind. Why is this? Why is Doki-Doki so successful at being a psychological horror game? I believe a sizable reason is due to how it is portrayed. When you download a game like Resident Evil, Five Nights at Freddy's, or Outlast, one knows exactly what they are getting into even if it's their first entry into that series. Large, dark rooms, jump scares, disturbing images, all the sorts. Why is that? Presentation. First impressions are very important to humans. It is what parents tell their kids before their first job interview and such, but why are first impressions such a big deal? Well, it all boils down to survival instincts. Our initial interaction with something forms such a residual construct in our mind. It is how early humans distinguish between dangerous and docile environments. It is still on us today, although less about pure survival and more about social interaction. How many times have you seen a person you don't know at all behaving in a manner that you thought uncalled for? Whether they were being blatantly hostile to another, or just a bit too loud for your taste, something in the way they acted made you not like them in that instant. Now, would you go out of your way to try and be their friend, or spend time around that person? Most likely the answer is no. That individual gives off an image you don't agree with, and you wouldn't want other people seeing you as you see this person that you don't like. Now, when you look at the download page for Outlast, it is pretty apparent that this is a scary game, and that is what the developers want me to see. More traditional scary games prey on that feeling of knowing that you are in trouble. Even the startup menu will be dark and ambient, with eerie sounds and such. They are telling you that this will scare you, and you clicking the start button is your consent. It's like subjecting yourself to a jack-in-the-box. You know it is going to give you a start, but it is useless without you turning the handle. While playing the game, they expect you to traverse through multiple dark rooms, corridors, and such, fully aware that your senses are sending a million red flags to your brain. What just moved? Did I see a shadow? Why am I all alone in this huge building? But you can't progress through the game in any other way, so you press forward, checking every corner twice, using every single source of light you encounter to the utmost degree, hoping that it just might spare you from the next jump scare. These types of games build a formula that uses your natural instincts as the foundation and generates scares around that. The same is true for most modern scary movies. These are titles that I like to give the label of preying on the body. Having your eyes strained to pierce through the darkness, then throwing a scary face right into the foreground to send a jolt through your spine. Then there are the forms that prey on the mind. Things like Doki-Doki Literature Club. Things that still use some imagery, but don't purely rely upon visuals to disturb the viewer. Psychological horror captures the gaze of the viewer's mind eye, and forces them to create their own disturbing situations. And what could possibly be scarier than the dusty recesses of one's own mind? Who could possibly know your deepest, darkest fears better than yourself? The viewer is given a basis, a feeble construct as to what the world in front of them could potentially hold, but rather than displaying the extent to which the rules can bend, or how twisted the possibilities can become, the reader is forced to pry and ponder as to what degree events can transpire, how warped the portrait can get, how deep the rabbit hole can go. How is the reader forced, though? Why not just turn off their brain and take everything at face value? Why delve deeper and torment oneself? Well, in regards to DDLC, this force is investment. When people discuss Act 1 of the game, the argument often arises that this part is too boring, or too dry, especially for those who are not accustomed to visual novels. I personally found myself immersed in Act 1, enjoying the well-written characters and dialogue, and the thought-provoking poems. I really saw the characters as believable and charismatic. And even though they played to multiple tropes, each girl had enough personality to put their own spin on stereotypical lines and make them their own. It was this very reason why the rest of the game essentially mind-screwed me for the rest of the ride, and pretty much everyone else for that matter. It is not so much the length of Act 1 that makes it important, or how much time we spend with the girls. It is the density of the whole experience, and the pretty facade that is displayed to us at the same time. And I don't just mean how pretty and thoughtful the poems are, or how many cute pictures there are of each girl. It is a medley of so many aspects that Act 1 is so discreetly and masterfully blended to create a sweet aroma, pulling us in for more. No matter how boring people saw the first act, they kept playing. Personally, the sudden jolt into Act 2 was destructive in a lot of ways. Yeah, sure, it destroyed my heart, but it also destroyed the premature first impressions I had developed based off of the game's lighthearted exterior. My guard was down. What was presented to me as an innocent and cute visual novel was actually a wolf in sheep's clothing, and I didn't spot the claws until the fangs were already around my neck. It is like how they do in scary movies, when a character will be running tirelessly from the murderer, and they finally reach a place that seems safe. The one working car within a 25-mile radius, or the barricaded safe house. Then, when the character lets their guard down for just a moment, it is revealed that the murderer is in the backseat of the car, or has been waiting for them in that very room, and the character unknowingly locked themselves in. It is that false sense of security that makes the stab in the back, the sucker punch, hit that much harder. In Doki-Doki, it was the realization that these girls that I had just spent hours building relationships with were vulnerable, and very much so. They were no longer cute girls for my character to swoon, they were now pretty pigs lined up for the slaughter, and I, the player, was now chained to the front row, being forced to watch. And this ties back to that force. My caring for the girls, which was to be my greatest asset in winning their hearts, was now my largest burden in watching them go through literal hell. A common theme in horror is the descent into madness complex. Simply put, it is someone slowly losing their mind. This is usually personified by individuals close to the main character, or the main character themselves. It starts out with everything being perfectly fine, then slowly warps to things being slightly off. The character is still recognizable and harmless, but they are different. Something about them has changed. Nothing major, but something significant enough to catch the attention of the reader and leave it in the back of their thoughts the next time they interact with this person. Small things are added up until the reader can expect that the character will change drastically, and then, before you know it, it has already happened. The thing that wears that person's face, but underneath has all but completely consumed who that individual was, and all that remains is an empty shell, a husk. A thing that looks like someone you once knew, but is completely different due to their thoughts, words, and actions. A malformed and grotesque soul, a malicious spirit that has consumed something you held dear. Being around them used to be a sigh of relief. Now, the surrounding air is so tense that you can hardly breathe. One thing that got to me was how unpredictable the girls became. The descent into madness of the game as a whole made them scary, and not just because of the creepy eyes and faces. It was the game itself literally derailing as the girls did. I had no idea as to how far the game would break, and by extension, the minds of the girls. I had no idea what any of them would say or do next, and that uncertainty was terrifying. In a game where I expected to be in full control, my mind couldn't feel more helpless and unsure. I was only left with the feeble construct to make guesses off of, and the game let my mind wander to great depths. I was making this hellish nightmare that my mind was in. I had seen enough to take me a couple hundred yards, and my mind took it a mile. This is the root of psychological horror, preying on the reader's mind to construct their own personal, intimate torment. And Doki-Doki was right there next to me, fueling the flame. So we've talked a lot about Doki-Doki alone, but let me draw a few connections from here to Bloodborne. Bloodborne is an action RPG made by From Software, the same studio that makes the infamous Dark Souls games. This entry deviates from the others by being a horror game, a Victorian cosmic horror game to be specific. The game draws massive inspiration from Lovecraftian cosmic horror, which is all about applying a sort of macro lens upon the universe. It is rooted in the idea that humans are infinitesimally small, that we are the ants of ants in the universe. This, coupled with man's ever-present fear of the unknown, makes for some disturbing thoughts. What all is out there in the universe that we do not know about? Are these entities dangerous? Could we die by something we can't even begin to understand? How many things are so complex that we only cannot understand them, but we cannot even begin to perceive them? There could be things all around us in our everyday lives that we are oblivious to, because we lack some auxiliary organ to do so, or simply the mental capacity. And what if, by some miracle, we, as an individual, suddenly become able to perceive something that most other humans cannot? If we are alone in this realization, does that make us crazy? Are we evolving or devolving? I started this tangent with solely Bloodborne in mind, but I can't help but have flashbacks to a certain fairly important part of the Doki-Doki Literature Club, and that's Monika. The past several rhetorical questions I listed off apply synonymously with her. The entire game happens because Monika became self-aware. She realized that she was a two-dimensional character with three-dimensional eyes. She can see that she is a mere video game character, and the same goes for everyone that she has ever known. Friends, family, no thoughts, emotions, dreams, or aspirations, just lines of code and a computer. Especially the other girls. After Monika's epiphany, she realizes that the other three girls are given a route. They are all coded to fall in love with the main character, provided he chooses them. Monika is the only one without this composition. One could say this enlightenment was an evolution both forwards and backwards. During the initial playthrough, the player most likely thought of Monika as crazy. I know I sure as hell did. Yet she was the most similar to us, with actual thoughts, passion, determination, and hatred. She was the most similar to us, and we despised her for it. But when asked how we would handle the same situation, how could we possibly answer any different? Yes, a lot of the things that Monika did were a bit eccentric. I didn't ask you to slaughter my waifus, Monika, but the reality is that we truly see her acts to be jarring because she was the outlier, the unknown variable. We knew all about the other girls, sure, but what did we know of Monika? Her first name, and that she plays piano. She is left to operate in the shadows on purpose. It is obvious that she is an integral part of the game, yet she is so mysterious. After all, she makes up 25% of the full cast, although that number can be debated. This ambiguity is the drive behind the animosity. We don't like what we cannot understand. And when it became even remotely apparent that Monika was pulling the strings, we had no possible clue as to why. Why kill your own friends? Why make this world a nightmare? Why break the whole game? Because we could see no one goal, her actions could not be predicted. She could go anywhere she wanted, and we couldn't do a thing but watch. Although most players saw Monika as some sort of omnipotent or clairvoyant being, I like to entertain the thought that she was the antithesis. What good is it knowing everything just to realize that everything is nothing? She herself says this throughout the story, a lot of times in her poems. Her epiphany that allowed her to know everything merely taught her how much she in fact doesn't know. Not only that, but the things that she could never know. As she said, in our world forever out of her reach. And when looking back to Bloodborne, this realization occurred to many characters throughout the base game and the Old Hunters DLC, leading them to commit some pretty serious actions. They were willing to do anything for more answers, more eyes. Many of them were literally driven mad upon realizing how much was out in the universe, and constantly questioned why it was that they were destined for such meager existences. This essay has been a lot about Monika, and that isn't intentional, I assure you.
A little bit of Monika in my life, a little bit of Monika by my side, a little bit of Monika's all I need, a little bit of
It's just that most of the cosmic horror elements that we've talked about mostly pertain to her. Unless you count Sayori's epiphany, but I consider that implied. As far as the other girls are concerned, they are prime examples of surreal horror. The amplification of their implied mental maladies and or rough atmospheres makes the aforementioned troubles pretty disturbing if thought about for too long. Imagine someone going inside your head and making your depression exponentially more potent. Depression is already something that one usually deals with constantly, but think if what was once a pestering buzz was turned into a deafening and endless cacophony. How could you do anything but hear the constant noise? How could you do anything but entertain these terrifying voices in your head. Imagine if the feelings you had worked hard to repress for a long time were suddenly and inexplicably being ripped out from within you for everyone to see. You know the things that you're doing are bad, but they feel too good to stop. You've been stopped for too long. You've tried pleasing everyone else for too long. These impulses can't be that bad, right? What is the worst that could happen from being yourself? Thank God Monika didn't mess with Natsuki too much, right? I mean, no matter how bad her home situation gets, she always has the club and you to run to. Okay, I think that is all that will fit into this video. Of course, this is nowhere near the full encompassment of all my thoughts, but this video is probably going to be at very least 20 minutes. I need to stop. This was an in-depth look at Doki-Doki Literature Club, and also a juxtaposition of it and another one of my favorite horror games, Bloodborne. I hope to have entertained and also to have provoked your mind. If I got you thinking at least a little bit, then these 8 pages I've typed out haven't been a complete waste of time. Speaking of time, I sincerely thank you for spending yours here with all of us Literature Club members, your hosts, DZ, then there's Sayori, Natsuki, Yuri, and last but certainly not least, Monika. If you like this video, I implore you to click that little button that says so. Also, get active in the comments. I would love to have discussions with you guys. And also, last but not least, subscribe if you are new. Thanks guys, I'll see you in the next one.
Closest of kin, bearer of our blood, I welcome thee. What is thy wish?